Production presents NATHANIEL HAWTHORNE. Man, I should do those more often. Well, here we go again, and right now, today we're doing NATHANIEL HAWTHORNE, because currently I'm reading The Scarlet Letter. Okay, I'll be honest with you guys, I didn't start it yet, but I'm planning on reading it, so let's get started with this old man's life. Sorry for calling you old. Alright, first up, we're just going to talk about his birth. NATHANIEL HAWTHORNE was actually born NATHANIEL HAWTHORNE. NATHANIEL HAWTHORNE. No W here, because that was originally how it was spelled. His three greats, grandpa was basically the first person to actually immigrate to the Americas, or the New World as it was called back then, from England. And we have no sources saying that his grandpa was a grumpy guy, but he was a Puritan, as I was said, and so he was also, when he got there, he became a really important man. He became a really important part in the politics of there. But he himself became infamous when he went into the land of harsh punishment. His son, NATHANIEL HAWTHORNE's great-great-grandpa, was called John Hawthorne, the son of William Hawthorne, the great-great-great-grandpa. 3 greats, by the way. And so John Hawthorne was a judge in the Salem witch trials, which, if J.K. Rowling was correct, would have done literally nothing to the witches. Basically, if J.K. Rowling was correct, she said, this should have happened. Clink. Pajam. Anyone else want a taste of this? Crackle, crackle, crackle. I mean, the Puritans did have a really, a radical version of the Puritans that went here from the Pilgrims. Were actually one of those people who, they did have the reputation of being fun killers, but that was just a little bit too extreme, even to some Puritan viewers, even the radical ones. I'm actually surprised the 2 Hawthornes we already discussed right now weren't kicked out. Yeah, that was really annoying too. And so that was the reason why NATHANIEL HAWTHORNE changed his name to Hawthorne, so that he added the W so that he wouldn't get mingled up with the witch Salem trial guy. He grew up in this nice, lovely house in Raymond, Maine. Yep, right there. This is his childhood home, and that was where he seemed to have grown up. In fact, afterwards, this is where he grew up, and afterwards they went to Salem again. Pazam! Who won a fight? And that's when his uncle, Robert Manning, actually found out about Nathaniel's storytelling abilities. So he insisted to Nathaniel's parents on letting him go to college, much to the displeasures of Nathaniel. And they sent him to this place called Bowdoin College in 1821 when Nathaniel turned 17. Mainly he went here because of the low tuition rate, and the family had connections with the school. And that's where NATHANIEL HAWTHORNE actually met this guy named Franklin Pierce, future president of the United States of America. He would become the 14th president of the USA, and possibly the inspiration for this funny old character. And the very first book he literally published was this novel called Fanshawe, which he literally published in his young times, and then tried to destroy all copies of the published books. Also, that backfired horribly because we still have the original books and even the revised versions there. He published it anonymously, which cost him $100, and then he ended up calling it the worst failure of his life. Then he wrote several short stories, which is a poet that he met in Bowdoin, just put them together here and pay all the expenses himself into Twice Told Tales, and then eventually even going to go ahead and publish the sequel to it 15 years later, and wrote a bunch of short stories, a lot. But the 2 most famous novels that actually launched him into fame was this: The Scarlet Letter and The House of the 7 Gables, a romance. But the most famous of these is The Scarlet Letter, because it talks about the topic on adultery, which was forbid by the 7th commandment. And that literally shows the fact that Nathaniel Hawthorne was a really great guy. In fact, why did he even write this anyway? Because he wrote about it because, according to the book itself, this is entirely fictional though, he wrote it right after he was ousted from his job, and then just before he left office, he found a patch with the letter A on it, and the whole patch was colored in a scarlet letter, and a manuscript, which according to the scarlet letter, which he wrote, is entirely fictional, just think of that, is the whole book of the scarlet letter. When he placed the scarlet A on his chest, it felt like he was burning, so he let it drop. I mean, it did feel like burning. And the whole book is basically about Nathaniel reading the whole darn manuscript. And remember, this is entirely fictional though, so yeah. In fact, Hawthorne was probably the most influential person in American literature at all. Herman Melville, the guy who wrote Moby Dick, and other authors in his day, in the later days, were actually heavily influenced by the Scarlet Letter. I mean, some people actually think of the A in different ways. Some think it's adultery. It stands for adultery. Others think it stands for angels. Later on, he actually met his future wife, Sophia Peabody, and this romance would end up to be the inspiration for the Blithedale Romance, which was published like 2 years after the publication of the Scarlet Letter, a romance. And they were actually quite together for some time at all. In fact, they've actually been engaged for like several years. Because it turns out they didn't want to be married because Nathaniel Hawthorne was now in financial problems, and he wanted to be financially supported enough so that he could raise a family before he married. So he did, and then they were engaged for quite a while, and finally when they married, they moved to their dream home. She was an artist, and he was a writer, which was a perfect duo, to be honest. So she would go into the studio and draw whatever she would draw, while Nathaniel wrote in his studio. They were never divorced, and they were happy with each other's lives. They had, in total, 3 kids. This is the least blurriest photo I could find, okay? Una, Julian, and Mary Alfonsa. Well, at least in the caption it says Rose, so I'm not really sure which one to believe, so I'll just go for Rose, because I like that better. So I'll just call them Una, Julian, and Rose. Later, the Hawthorne actually wrote some biographies and some non-fictions. For example, his biography about his friend Franklin Pierce, The Life of Franklin Pierce in 1852, which was supposed to help Pierce's campaign, and when Pierce won, he was basically given the reward as becoming a U.S. consul in Livermore, England, which suited him well, to be honest. Later, when he came back home, he was like, my gosh, this is the first time I've actually ever had a home in years. And he was actually happy. He was happy with his family, and everything was fine. Until one day, he had a weird illness, and even though his neighbors advised him against what he was about to do, he decided to go on a trip with his buddy Frank Pierce. This was after his term ended, to the White Mountains. This was during the time when the American Civil War was about to spring out. So he just went ahead and also visited Abraham Lincoln as well. Man, gosh, he knew 2 presidents. Not a lot of people know that much. Know that many presidents, at least. However, while he was on the White Mountains, he died in his sleep on May 19th of 1864. So yeah, that was it. Now, lots of people actually still kind of debate about Hawthorne's ideas. In fact, in the Scarlet Letter, it doesn't really say what was printed onto the main character's protagonist's lover's chest, what was branded on it, because for some reason the narrator decides, hey, it's just a nuance, I'm not going to put it on. So to this day, people still debate on it. Most people actually believe it's another Scarlet Azo, and I actually believe that too. And to be honest, that's about it. I actually really enjoyed making this video about Nathaniel Hawthorne. It's a 10-minute video. Hope you guys don't mind watching it, because I've actually spent like 30 minutes on this video. So go ahead and watch this. That's like the most amount of work I put on one video. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Hope to see you guys soon in another episode of Hanson Sean. This has been a Dark Sound production. And then until next time, Shnan out. Peace.